We want to see the isomorphism theorem in action. So first let's see the statement. I have written it out over here, but it is useful just to keep the picture in mind. Now this triangle can be drawn in several ways. So it is the configuration of maps that is important. We are given two maps from a ring R. F is some ring homomorphism and pi is the quotient map onto the ring R mod I, where I is an ideal of R. We are looking for a map F bar making this diagram commute. That means that pi followed by F bar should equal F. The answer is that a unique such F bar exists precisely when I is contained in the kernel of F and F bar is injective when I is equal to the kernel of F. This second statement is called the isomorphism theorem and it is frequently used. But both statements are important to keep in mind. Okay, now by taking I to be the kernel of F, F bar becomes an isomorphism from R modulo the kernel of F to the image of F. And then I can think of F as quotient map followed by this isomorphism followed by inclusion into the target. Okay. Now to prove this theorem, I can first just disregard multiplication. Then all of this is just about abelian groups and that statement should be familiar to you from a previous course. If necessary, you can review the previous part of this lecture. So all that remains is to show that F bar preserves multiplication and 1. But F and pi are both ring homomorphisms and pi is surjective. So you should check that this equation forces the definition of F bar and also forces F bar to be a ring homomorphism. Before we get to examples, here are some useful points to keep in mind. First, the map F bar that this theorem gives is from the quotient. So, if you are looking for a map from a quotient, then you can try to use this theorem as a tool. Next, in the condition for existence of F bar, remember which way the inclusion goes. It is not hard to understand why, because if I contains something outside the kernel, then that would get mapped to 0 here but non-zero over here, and F bar cannot take 0 to something non-zero. Finally, there are two ways to think about this theorem. If I am given the ideal I and regard it as fixed, then this is about what's so special about the quotient map pi with respect to other maps from R. You can formulate the universal property of the quotient precisely if you wish. On the other hand, if F is given to me, then calculating the kernel of F becomes important. Now you should go back and see all the kernel calculations that we did in the last lecture and see what the isomorphism theorem has to say in each case. We'll see in examples that polynomial rings and the isomorphism theorem work together quite well. Again, a ring homomorphism F from R to S induces an isomorphism from R modulo the kernel to the image of F. Frequently, we will even drop the bar and call this map F. In the first example, I am taking the identity map on R and extending it to the polynomial ring by sending x to C by substitution principle. So this is just evaluating a polynomial at C. The map is surjective and its kernel is the principal ideal generated by x minus C by long division. Therefore, I get the source ring modulo the kernel is isomorphic to all of the target ring. In the second example, I am evaluating an integer polynomial at the complex number I. The image of this map is the ring of Gaussian integers. And again by long division, the kernel is the principal ideal generated by x square plus 1. So I get an isomorphism between Zx modulo this ideal and the ring of Gaussian integers. it may seem that I am using a more complicated ring to describe this one. That is not the case. We will see later on how to understand this ring better by using the ring ZX. We will see many more examples like this when we learn how to adjoin elements. At that time, we will also see that this notation is consistent with the notation for polynomial rings. In the last example, I am taking an integer polynomial and reducing its coefficients modulo p. This map is also surjective and its kernel is the principal ideal generated by the number p. That means p times all of z of x, not just p times z. Therefore, I get this isomorphism, which I can also get in a more general case by taking an arbitrary ring R and its ideal I. These examples were fairly simple, but they are important because we will use these later on to build more interesting ones on top of them. Next, please do these two related problems. The second one builds on this interesting Artin example that I had asked you to read and generalize. Let's try to follow the usual strategy. So I look for a surjective homomorphism from the top ring to the right ring such that the kernel is precisely this ideal. I start with the identity map from R to itself and extend it by sending x to t and y to t cube. Then y minus x cube goes to t cube minus t cube, which is 0. I claim that in fact this polynomial generates the entire kernel, and I will show this using long division. For that, I regard this as a polynomial in the single variable y with coefficients that are polynomials in x. Then this is a linear polynomial. Therefore, dividing by it will give me a constant remainder, which means a remainder that is only a polynomial in x. If I take something in the kernel and divide it by this polynomial, the remainder must also be in the kernel. Now, the remainder is a polynomial only in x. The map simply replaces x by t. So, no non-zero polynomial purely in x can be in the kernel. So, therefore, there was no remainder after all, and the kernel is precisely the principal ideal that I wanted. So, my strategy works. I can try to follow the same strategy over here. For that, I need to find good polynomials to which I should send x and y such that y square minus x cube is in the kernel, and in fact the kernel is generated by this polynomial. After that, I should identify the image of the map that I have defined. So please try to do this now. It is natural to send x to t square and y to t cube. Then y square minus x cube does go to 0. To show that it generates the kernel, I can use the same long division argument as here. But now, this is a quadratic polynomial in y. Therefore, when I divide by it, I get a remainder that is linear in y. And the argument becomes a little more involved, but it still works, as you can see in the textbook. Next, I have to identify the image of the map that I have defined. The map is not surjective, unlike the map F, which had T itself in the image. The image of G is generated by, as a subring, constants T square and T cube. Constants and T square give me all even degree monomials. Multiplying by T cube, I get all odd degree monomials except T itself. Therefore, the image contains all polynomials that have no degree 1 term. Now, you should check that such polynomials themselves form a subring. Therefore, this is the entire image, and this subring is isomorphic to the given quotient. This isomorphism still leaves a question unanswered. Could this quotient ring be still somehow isomorphic to the polynomial ring? For simplicity, let's assume that the map needs to be identity on the ring R. Then the answer is no. For example, then this polynomial ring would need to be isomorphic to this subring, which you can show cannot happen. There is a geometric perspective on this ring, at least when R is real numbers or better complex numbers. In that case, this ring is somehow related to the graph of this polynomial y square minus x cube. And this graph has a sharp point at the origin, which somehow makes this ring very different from the polynomial ring. You can learn more about this in algebraic geometry. Next, we have two quotients of the ring of Gaussian integers. One by the ideal j generated by 3 plus I and 7, and the next by the ideal k generated by 3 plus I and 8. So, see what you can say about these quotients. Are they isomorphic to known rings? If not that, are they finite, integral domains, whatever you can find out. So please do it now. Okay, first a very basic point. Because 7 is in J, in this quotient, real and imaginary part of any element can be reduced mod 7. And so the cardinality of this quotient is at most 49. But it collapses much more. Because 3 plus I is in the ideal, multiplying by the complex conjugate, I get that 10 is also in J. But now the linear combination 1 of 7 and 10 is also in J, and therefore the ideal is all of the ring of Gaussian integers. And therefore this quotient is 0 because J is not a proper ideal. And so according to our definition, this is not even a ring. Alright, I can apply the same logic over here. Because 3 plus I is there, I still get 10 in K. Now along with 8, I deduce that 2 must be in K. Therefore, the size of this quotient is at most 4. Does it collapse more? See if you can find out. Okay, my first claim is that the ideal K is in fact principal, generated by the element 1 plus I. I have switched to the longer notation for principal ideals because I want to use this element 1 plus I in some calculations for which I will need parentheses. I will show that each of these ideals is contained in the other. First, let's show that 1 plus I is contained in K. I already know that 2 is contained in K and 3 plus I is given to be in K. Therefore, their difference 1 plus I is in K. Next, I should show that both of these elements are contained in the principal ideal. I remember the trick of multiplying by the complex conjugate, and I see that the element 2 is in the principal ideal. Therefore, now the multiple 8 of 2 is also there, and adding 2 with the generator 1 plus I get 3 plus I also to be in the principal ideal. So I am done. But I still have to find out what this ring looks like. Remember that 2 is 0 in this ring, and so every element can be reduced to one of 4 expressions. So write these down and see if there is any further collapse. It does collapse more, and let's see why. 2 is a multiple of 1 plus I. Therefore, in this quotient, real and imaginary part of anything can be reduced to 0 or 1, giving me these 4 expressions. But the last congruence class is 0 here, and I bar equals minus 1 bar, which equals 1 bar because 2 is 0 in this quotient. Therefore, these 4 expressions reduce to just 2. And these two congruence classes are different because 1 is not a multiple of 1 plus I in Gaussian integers, as you can check. So I have obtained a 2-element ring which is therefore isomorphic to Z mod 2Z. Alright, a quick comment. Here I have dutifully put bars everywhere to indicate congruence classes. In practice, people are rarely this finicky. We will also mostly drop the bars because psychologically this is better. It should cause no problems as long as I clearly specify which ring I am working in. So you should get used to this idea. Next, I have given you 3 more quotients of the ring of Gaussian integers. Again, try to say to the best of your ability what you can about these rings. In the first example, we are going modulo 2. So just like before, I reduced to these 4 congruence classes. Now, looking at the multiples of 2 in this ring, you should see for yourself that this time these 4 congruence classes stay distinct. So, I have obtained a 4 element ring. This ring is not isomorphic to Z mod 4Z because there 2 is non-zero, whereas here 2 is 0. Next, this ring is not an integral domain because the square of this element is 0, essentially from this equation. Alright, this was fun and games, but when we go to more complicated examples, like here, then this ad hoc method becomes more awkward. So we would like to have something more conceptual. And we will have such a method very soon by combining the isomorphism theorem and the correspondence theorem. For now, I have given you some information about these examples, and it will be very beneficial for you to prove this on your own. So take it as an exercise and try to do it seriously. I can also ask what happens when I take an ideal generated by more than one element and go modulo that. In general, I get very complicated rings, but also very interesting. For example, quotients of polynomial rings in several variables are important in algebraic geometry and studied a lot in commutative algebra. However, for the ring of Gaussian integers, I am very lucky because for this ring, I have division with remainder. And therefore, just like for integers and for the ring of polynomials in one variable over a field, every ideal in this ring is principal. And then just like homework 0, I can prove a unique factorization theorem. All you need to get started is the notion of the size of a Gaussian integer a plus ib. But then I remember the complex norm and define the size to be the non-negative integer a square plus b square. Now you have all the ingredients necessary to do all of this on your own. I will also discuss it in a couple of lectures, but it sticks better in your mind if you do it on your own. So go for it. After that extended example involving Gaussian integers, here is a last example illustrating the use of the isomorphism theorem. So we have a ring R, an ideal I of the ring, and a subring of the ring R. Observe that S plus I is also a subring and it has I as an ideal. So as an exercise, I want you to show this isomorphism of rings. A key decision that you have to make in the beginning is which way you are going to try to construct the map. If you do it right, then this is very easy. So try it. It is easier to construct a map from the right to the left because I can just start with the inclusion from S to S plus I. So complete the argument now. We compose the inclusion with the quotient map onto S plus I modulo I. This composite map from S is surjective onto this because in this quotient I am killing I. So any congruence class is represented by an element of S alone. Next, let's see the kernel of the composite map. The kernel of the quotient is of course I. So when restricted to S, the kernel is just the intersection of S with I. Finally, the image of the composite map is isomorphic to source modulo the kernel, and I am done. This result is not as important as its counterparts for groups and vector spaces. But of course, comfort with quotients and the basic isomorphism theorem both are extremely crucial, which is why we did a bunch of examples, and you should do the same on your own.